morning sun shines on the gleaming hide of a muscular ranch horse. The aroma of bacon and coffee drifts from the wood cook stove at a cow camp. Silver spurs jingle as the men and women of the West get set for another day in the saddle. From the heart of Canada's finest ranching country, this is the Spirit of the West with rancher and horse trainer Hugh McLennan and his collection of music, poetry, and conversations with the folks who live and work with horses and cattle in the Spirit of the West.
On April 16th this year, the National Cowboy Hall of Fame in Oklahoma City presented the prestigious Chester A. Reynolds Award to a very deserving cowboy and a good friend of ours, Rusty Richards. The award is given annually by the Western Heritage Museum and Cowboy Hall of Fame to a cowboy who has shown throughout his life a body of quality, of work, and an unwavering commitment to Western ideals. Rusty, of course, was the tenor for the Sons of the Pioneers for over 20 years. He's a fine horse trainer, songwriter, has worked as a stuntman on a whole bunch of Western movie and TV shows, and this is kind of special. This week, you'll hear Rusty Richards' memories of his dear friend, the King of the Cowboys, Roy Rogers. And this will lead into some information about Roy's famous Golden Palomino trigger and Glenn Randall, the guy who trained him.
Besides all of the wonderful tricks, that he taught Trigger and other Coco, Rex Allen's horse, and other movie horses.
As I put the Rangeland news for this show together, I'm looking out the window, looking at some of our calves running around, and then I hear this.
We have seen prices for feeder calves come down.
And it's Mother's Day this weekend, of course, and the Cowboy Poetry Spotlight will pay a special tribute to ranch moms everywhere.
She's been run over by yearlings, thrown out of the truck, and broke several bones even twice. This woman has lived through thick and through thin, and I know she has paid the full price.
On the horse training file, a rider's feeling frustrated because her horse, it seems, would rather spend time with his pasture mates than with her. I'll analyze that whole situation and try to help her feel better. And we have a special classic Song of the West and the story behind the song. And I'll visit with Rusty Richards after this tribute to the group that Roy Rogers started and Rusty sang with for so many years.
Sons of the pioneers who gave us all those wonderful cowboy songs. There would be no cool water waiting way out there, no tumbling tumbleweeds drifting along. If it weren't for Leonard Sly, there wouldn't be Roy Rogers riding Trigger across the silver screen. For the harmonies provided by Tim Spencer, well, I can tell you're starting to see what I mean. Where would we be without Bob Nolan's mighty pen and the lyrics he put to song down through the years? I don't know how we'll get along when the day comes that they're gone. I can't imagine life without the Sons of the Pioneers. They'd sing and Roy would yodel those beautiful Western tunes, setting a standard for all Western bands. Lloyd Perryman, Tommy Doe, Still Warren, and all the others held the music of the West in solid hands. Where would we be without that Western trio sound that Roy and Tim and Bob brought to our ears? I don't know how we'll get along when the day comes that they're gone. I can't imagine life without the Sons of the Pioneers. I don't want a world without the Sons of the Pioneers. I'd say so long to the Red River Valley if there's no sons of the pioneers.
Well, when Roy Rogers, the king of the cowboys, rode across the Great Divide, July the 6th, 1998, I had a long phone conversation with Roy's great friend and longtime Sons of the Pioneers member, Rusty Richards.
Rusty, you, of course, knew Roy and the whole family really, really well. And I can remember someplace sitting around with a group of folks and you were talking about Roy. And he was not only, looked good with a 6-gun in the movies, but I've heard that he was really a great man. And I can kind of recall a story somewhere where you were throwing something up in the air and Roy was doing the shooting or something. Can you recall what I'm sort of thinking about here?
Sure. Roy used to do a thing where he'd draw his 6 guns, and I'm sure he had birdshot in there because we're out in the public, But try that with your right hand, let alone your left hand sometime. And I'm throwing these, what they were was like clay pigeons, and we filled them with confetti and glued them face to face. So it was like a clay pocket full of confetti. And he not only shot them, he had to shoot them on cue. We had this song, and Dale Evans would sing a line, and then we'd say, I can't remember, shoot, and it was called Bullseye Black Eye. And if he hit it, he said bullseye, and then she'd sing the last of the refrain. So it was right in the song. And I would throw him up in the air, and he'd draw and fire. And I mean, first with the right hand, then with the left. And boy, I mean, it was rare when we got to say black eye.
Is that right?
Because he usually hit them.
Yeah.
And that's, birdshot is one thing, but try drawing them with his pistols and, up there and right on command.
Right.
Right within the thing of the song, and he'd hit them.
Well, I know he did a lot of trap and skeet shooting, and has won a few hundred straight badges at trap and skeet as well. So.
Yeah, he was really a good shot. He was good at anything that he undertook, and he was a sportsman and loved all kinds of sports. He was an avid hunter and fisherman, and was very good at both. And also he liked to bowl, and he was a great archer. He could really shoot. He just, if he decided to do it, he didn't want to do it half-heartedly. He really put himself into it and was very good at it.
Got a real nice song from Rusty Richards and more memories of Roy Rogers and Trigger when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. In this day and age, those larger-than-life celebrities, when we see them on the screen or on the big stage with lots of special effects, they travel with a huge entourage, and they aren't often that approachable. But one of the biggest Western stars of all time, possibly one of the most recognizable personalities of his time, and if you ever wondered what kind of a person Roy Rogers was, just ask his good friend Rusty Richards.
Where did you first come to know him?
When I first actually met him, I had worked with him once, but I didn't know him. I was just a riding, shooting cowboy, and I worked in The Son of Paleface.
Oh, really?
And,
that was one of my very favorite of all the movies Roy made, with Bob Hope and Jane Russell. And
Well, I didn't have any great part in or anything, but I was there working, as an extra. And and I didn't know Roy at all, but then of course, when I started working with the Sons of the Pioneers, we worked with Roy. The first time I met him was at his home in Chatsworth, and was really impressed with him. Of course, I was thrilled to be meeting him, but I was impressed with what just a regular guy he was, how much he enjoyed just the camaraderie of the group, And eventually we became, where he'd come out in the middle of our act and put his hand on one of our shoulders and say, "I love these guys like my brothers." And I always just felt 10 feet tall when he said that.
Oh, man.
Because, there was nothing to not like about Roy.
Yeah.
He was just such a great guy. I mean, aside from all of the wonderful things that he did during his life, he was just a good guy to be around. He had a good sense of humor and loved a good story, you know, and would share things with us and seemed to relax a lot with us guys, you know. He was probably one of the most recognizable faces on the planet. And he couldn't step out of a room without immediately having people want to talk to him, and he was so approachable, you know, that they'd want to come up and visit. So getting time to himself was difficult. And even when we'd sit down to eat, you know, I'd see him get a little impatient once in a while, but mostly, like he'd say, "Can I finish my meal?" or something like that. But usually, in the course of doing it, he took what they had and signed it and everything. But that was very minor compared to how generous he was with his time. And he actually loved visiting with people. And when he out at the museum, that was just a regular thing with him. He'd get up every day and dress like Roy Rogers and go down there, and people were always telling me, you know, I met Roy Rogers at the museum. And that was when he was more relaxed with everyone there, you know, because he was just there. And, I mean, I loved him like my brother.
Well, we'll talk about Roy's famous golden palomino Trigger after one of the many wonderful songs of the West written and sung by Rusty Richards. I love this one called Call of the Wild.
If the summer wind blows in something that grows into something that you can't quite name, and you feel the pride you just can't hide, like a wolf never meant to be tamed. It's a call of the wild. If the whippoorwill calls and the thundering falls and rainbows to the sky, and you feel the thrill that sends up a chill when you hear the lobo wolf cry. It's a call of the wild. When you feel the warm Santanas blowing, or see the crackling lightning break the sky. When you hear the raging rivers flowing, there's a love in the call of the wild that you can't deny. When you see a dewdrop sparkle like a diamond, when you hear a rippling stream, there's a time in the morning when the rustle of a new day wakes up a wonderland dream. And the call of the wild. When you feel the warm Santanas blowing, or see the crackling lightning break the sky. When you hear the raging rivers flowing, there's a love in the call of the wild that you can't deny. When you see a dewdrop sparkle like a diamond, when you hear a rippling stream, there's a time in the morning when the rustle of a new day wakes up a wonderland dream. And the call of the wild, rippling, flowing, thundering, blowing, wonderland call of the wild.
Rusty Richards with the Sons of the Pioneers and Call of the Wild. And Rusty's on the line with some special memories of Roy Rogers.
You can't talk about Roy without talking about Trigger.
Right, right. Yeah, and I guess you probably saw Trigger firsthand lots.
He did what?
You must have seen Trigger
yes,
quite a bit.
Yeah, you bet. And he was a great horse. The trainer, Glenn Randall, is the one that kind of turned Roy on to him. And Randall was just an awesome trainer. You know, he was a great horse trainer. He was a great reinsman. And besides all of the wonderful tricks, you know, that he taught Trigger and other Coco, Rex Allen's horse, and other movie horses, he also trained a lot of the Rejoneador horses from Mexico, a lot of the Lipizan horses that you see in the United States, the rodeo clowns, trick mules, and ponies. he was just awesome. He trained the horses from Ben-Hur, and he was a wonderful, gentle guy. You know, that he was easy to like, and of course Roy loved him, and he had that great rein on Trigger. You know, he's just like a reining horse besides all the tricks.
Well, yeah,
I probably talked too much.
No, that's this is great.
It get me and you on horses, you and we're hard to slow down.
That's for sure. Yeah, the day goes kind of fast, but
Yep.
no, this is just great to hear because I know I saw Roy at the Calgary Stampede. I think it was gosh, I can't remember what year, but it was when Trigger was getting on already, but he was still using them. And my gosh, he would do all those dance routines with him and everything, you know. And it was just so neat to watch. He must have had a pile of tricks in his repertoire.
Oh, he did. Randall he spoke horse. You know, he could make them do anything.
Yeah.
And the horses liked him on top of that.
Yeah.
He had a way with him that was really, really good and gentle, and he could really communicate with the horse.
Right.
And just coax him into doing all these things. We had one thing with Casey Tibbs was telling me that he and Glenn Randall took him down to a ballpark in the valley and met with Leo DeRocher. And they had Trigger sitting on home plate and with a baseball hat on his head and all kinds of stuff with Leo DeRocher.
Right.
But that was typical of, anything you wanted him to do, Randall could give you what you wanted,
Yeah.
He was a great guy. And
Well, coming up, it's the one and only Baxter Black. And what are you going to talk about this week, Bax?
Cold feet, bare arms, sweat in your eyes, small heifers and big calves, manual labor and dogged determination.
Okay, that sounds familiar. And that's next when the Spirit of the West continues right after this.
Howdy, friends. This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan with a little peek at progress. What holds the loaded 30,000-pound trailer to the heavy-duty truck? What holds the 38-foot RV trailer to the dually? What holds the 2-horse trailer with your daughter's favorite pony to the half-ton pickup? Well, the odds are it's a B&W trailer hitch, probably a turnover bowl, American-made, employee-owned, customer-tuned, and proud of their part in America's greatness. B&W, holding things together down the road. Imagine you were a livestock man in medieval England 1,000 years ago. It's spring, snow on the ground, mud in the cow lot. You walk the small pasture where the heavy heifers are kept. It's hard to see much with just the moonlight, but you spot one in the process of calving, 1 foot showing. You check the rest of the cows the best you can and get back to the heifer. No progress. So you walk back to the cow lot and set the gates. Using a long stick, you get the heifer up and you drive her into the lot. There's some straw scattered behind the windbreak. She finds it and lays down. You walk to the earthen-roofed shed to collect your tools. You manage to drop a homemade halter over her head and tie her loosely to a post. There's some tepid water in your oaken bucket. After taking off your tunic, you wash your arms and kneel down behind her. Taking a 3-foot leather thong, you slip a noose around the protruding foot. Following your father's advice, you next slip a hand inside and search for the other foot. You attach a second thong to it and take a wrap around each hand and begin to pull. And by pulling when she pushes, resting when she rests, you finally deliver the calf 2 hours later. You rub him down, get him under the flank to suck, and you get to bed at daybreak. Sound familiar? Well, we have made some progress in 1,000 years. We've traded in the moonlight for a flashlight, a hemp rope for a nylon, wool underwear for a goose down, leather shoes for rubber boots, leather thongs for chrome-plated OB chains, and we've traded in patience for a ratchet calf puller. But for the most part, the process remains the same. Cold feet, bare arms, sweat in your eyes, small heifers and big calves, manual labor and dogged determination. Progress has mechanized, modernized, and computerized much of our world, from farming to pharmacy, from coal mining to dentistry, from astronomy to architecture. But those of us who practice the ancient art of birthing livestock could trade places with our counterparts 1,000 years ago, and we'd be interchangeable almost immediately. Sort of like horseshoers, acupuncturists, dog trainers, and herbal medicine salesmen. Makes you think, doesn't it? This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan, brought to you by B&W Turnover Bowl.
Well, the Rangeland News is next, but first I'd like to have you hear this. Bernadette Ducharme was in the Spirit of the West Rising Star Showcase at the Kamloops Cowboy Festival this year. And we had a wonderful, talented group of singers and poets, and although Bernadette wasn't the first place winner, she sure won the hearts of a lot of people. And this is from her latest CD, and the title could describe my guest Rusty Richards. He was good around horses.
He was born and raised a city kid, belonged for those cowboy places where he could smell the scent of pines, taste the freedom of open spaces. And at night he dreamed about horses. Found a nice little spread high up in the hills, and someone who gave him a chance. He proved he was worth every penny he earned and could do anything on the ranch. And he was pretty damn good around horses. He broke every colt that was born on the place, and some that were ranked to the bone. Then he entered the world of the wild ones and branded a few of his own. And he learned all he could about horses. The rodeo scene was exciting and rough, and he got caught up in the game. He rode everything that stood on four legs, but the pony chucks brought him fame. And he always bedded down near his horses. When time took its toll and he couldn't ride, he'd help all the gates at the shoes. He wasn't afraid to give some advice and get a little dust on his boots. And he fed and watered the horses. Near the end of his life, he'd sit for hours thinking back to the days of his youth. With failing eyes, he'd stare out the window and wonder how much was the truth. But he was pretty damn sure he saw horses. And when he passed on to that range in the sky, nobody would utter a word. Why he shouldn't be given the honor as wrangler for the heavenly herd. And God knows he was good around horses. Yeah, God knows he was good around horses. Yeah, God knows Frenchy was good around horses.
The news of the Rangeland, a roundup of news and coming events from around the West.
At the top of page 1, it says the latest U.S. feedlot placements surprised some market experts last week, and with more, here's Gary Crawford.
A bit of a surprise in Friday's Agriculture Department Cattle on Feed report. Feedlots during March bringing in 5% more animals than March a year ago, but most analysts were looking for more placements, 7% or more than a year ago. We asked USDA livestock analyst Shale Shagam why placements might have been less than expected.
Some of that may reflect the fact that there is good forage out there. There is apparently an abundance of cattle. We have seen prices for feeder calves come down, and so as long as there's forage, there may be less incentive by some cow-calf operators or backgrounders to place those animals into feedlots.
And less incentive for feedlots to buy feeders because
the cash fed cattle price is weak.
Prices for fed steers averaging now about $125 a hundredweight. This time a year ago it was $165.
So prices have taken quite a hit.
But Shagam says they may improve at least a little bit as we get closer to the summer grilling season. Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Washington.
Lethbridge County in Alberta has approved a controversial new change on livestock in the region. The County Council approved a measure that'll see a $3 per animal unit charge, which is expected to be included on residents' tax notices in May. That's this month. The measure is expected to raise about $6.1 million over 2 years to help pay for road and bridge repair. Lethbridge County is commonly known as Feedlot Alley, known for its high-density cattle feeding operations, and feedlot operators have previously expressed concerns that a tax this high would drive a lot of them to move somewhere else. And the fast food controversy seems to be getting louder. A well-known burger place has been running ads for quite a while on television that say their beef is raised without added hormones or steroids, but what they don't say is that most of their beef is imported from places like the U.S., Australia, and South America. And particularly in South America, quality control is not nearly as high as in Canada and the U.S. There was a good post on Facebook a few days ago that said, among other things, if you're worried about the amount of estrogen in Canadian beef, the fact is there's a lot more estrogen in the bun than there is in the patty. And the Beef Research Council, that's Beef Cattle Research Council, notes on its website that producing the same amount of beef without hormones would require 12% more cattle and 10% more land, as well as more feed, water, and fertilizer. And those production costs would mean more expensive meat. I had a real nice visit with former saddle bronc champion Ivan Daines while we were out at the Red Deer Main Event Horse Expo, and Ivan filled me in on some of the folks who will be at his 40th annual Ivan Daines Country Music Picnic at the Daines Rodeo Ranch in Innisfail, Alberta, August the 10th to the 14th. And what a lineup! Among the many entertainers, remember Lacey J. Dalton, David Frizzell, Marty Haggard, the son of Merle Haggard, Dwayne Steele, R. Harlan Smith, and so many more. Plus Ivan's Canadian Horse Training Championships, with colts supplied by Ken Budfordson, and some of the trainers you'll see, Tommy DeRoche, Brent Trout, Rod Olson. And for information on this part of the event, and if you're a trainer interested in taking part, you can call Cade Mills at 403-392-8602. Oh yeah, we will be there too. I hope you can join us. And May the 31st, it's the big buck and horse sale at the Innisfail Auction Market. They have pre-sort sales on Mondays and, of course, regular cattle sales every Wednesday. Get all the information at InnisfailAuctionMarket.com. And you know, there's really interesting reading on the cattle markets and the whole cattle industry, and it doesn't matter where you live. I think you'll find it valuable. That's in every issue of Alberta Beef and Beef Illustrated. You can subscribe online at albertabeef.ca or call 403-250-1090. And I guess that takes us down to the final item. In the finals of the recently concluded main event Trainers Challenge, I was there in the announcer's stand watching Doug Mills completing his winning run on a very challenging colt. And our three judges, Stan Jacobs, Ron Hoffman, and Russell Clementson, were just up behind me. Well, Doug's wireless headset with that little microphone was making a lot of noise. And Scotty, the superb sound man from Lee's Music, was right there with us, and he said the problem was that little windscreen from the mouthpiece was missing. Apparently, Pat Pirelli was using it earlier in the day, and Scotty thought maybe Pat had accidentally swallowed it. And I'm not sure which judge it was, but one of them said, well, that's okay. We can probably have it back by tomorrow. But you might not want to put it near your mouth. And that's the Rangeland News. Coming up on the Horse Training File, why a herd-bound horse is nothing to be too worried about. And there's more from Rusty Richards and a good song about Trigger when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. Coming up on the Horse Training File, a rider is pretty concerned about what she sees as a frustrating problem. Her horse is really herd-bound and seems to only be settled and calm when his pasture mates are close by. When she tries to ride away from the barn, he constantly calls back to the other horses. And the further she gets, the more nervous the horse becomes. I'll try to analyze what's going on and offer some help. And now, here's something else you might want to add to your calendar for 2017. Well, the entire Spirit of the West cruise gang is going
way up north, to Alaska, way up north, to Alaska, north to Alaska, we're going north for Russia's song. North to Alaska, we're going north for Russia's song.
That's right. My wife Billy and I will be hosting a great group of Spirit of the Westers aboard the beautiful Holland America ship, the Noordam. And we'll sail out of the spectacular Vancouver Harbor, visiting Ketchikan, Juneau, Skagway, Glacier Bay, and then we'll have 2 spectacular days of sightseeing in Denali National Park. Then we'll board the magnificent McKinley Railroad with their sightseeing dome cars and hopefully have a good look at North America's highest peak, Mount McKinley. And then it's on to Anchorage. We'll have our Western music concerts, sing-alongs, great food, and it's a trip that's been on the bucket list of a lot of folks for a long time. And the whole package includes return airfare from Calgary, Edmonton, and Vancouver, and includes ground transfers in Vancouver and Anchorage, plus all of our Spirit of the West group gatherings, all port and government taxes, all onboard meals, entertainment, and room service, and a special group reception, lots of networking opportunities, our special Spirit of the West gifts, the highly coveted Spirit of the West t-shirt, and a special Spirit of the West tour just for our group in Juneau. Now here's something else. If you like traveling by rail, we have an optional Rocky Mountaineer rail package to travel from Calgary to Vancouver, available on request. Our entire schedule with prices and everything else is available on the cruise page at our website, hugh-mclennan.com. And you can get all the information at this toll-free number, 1-800-530-0131. Now, the horse training file. A rider paid a lot of money for a fairly well-broke horse. The horse was used to being turned out in a good-sized pasture with about 15 other horses when he wasn't being ridden. After having him a few months, she says this horse is getting harder and harder to catch. And when I try to ride him away from his buddies, he gets very anxious and prances and dances with his head way up in the air. I've tried spanking him when he does this, but it just seems to make it worse. Okay, well, you have a challenge, but it's not all bad news. It's wired into the DNA of a horse to seek the safety and the protection of the herd over almost anything else. So how do we overcome this tendency? First, we have to demonstrate to the horse that you are the leader and that you will keep him safe. Think of it in terms of bond. It's the horse's nature to bond and synchronize mentally, emotionally, and physically with his herd, specifically with the herd leader, and it's up to you to prove that you are his herd leader. Now, you need to become such a good leader that your horse chooses to leave the herd to be with you. How do you do that, you say? Well, it will happen when you can learn to be totally in sync with your horse. When you're on the ground working with him, the subtleness of your body language, your timing and positioning, if done right, can really make him feel secure with you. Establishing his respect without question, only letting him into your space with your permission, insisting that he leave you when you ask, all play a part. And finally, try not to get too frustrated when your horse would rather huddle with his herd. If your horse seems to place a lot of importance on bond and safety, it just presents you with a great opportunity to develop and hone your leadership skills. And believe me, when your horse sees you as his trusted leader, the sky's the limit in what you can do together, and you'll start towards that great bond that true horsemen know and understand. And that's the horse training file. It was great to visit with the folks from Hoffman's Horse Ration and Hoffman's Horse Mineral out there at the main event, and they have a new group of varieties for Hoffman's Horse Ration, and you can find out more at hoffmanshorseration.com. I know we feed it to the Wonder Horse Lucky every day, and she's doing real well with it. Soon after Roy Rogers signed a contract with Republic Pictures and before he began production on his first film, he started searching for a suitable horse to ride in the movies. Back then, the B cowboy stars all rode beautiful lead horses as compared to the ordinary cast horses. Republic sent out a casting call to the rental stables that provided horses to the movie companies, and Roy tried out a couple of pretty good ones, but as soon as he got on a big golden Palomino sent over by the Hudkin Brothers stable, he knew he'd found the horse he wanted and he didn't need to look any further. And while discussing a name for the horse, Smiley Burnett, Roy's sidekick in his first two films, commented that big horse was sure quick on the trigger, and Roy decided that'd be a good name for him, and that's how Trigger got his name. Smiley was right. Trigger was very fast. In fact, he was the fastest horse on the lot. The beautiful golden horse was really athletic. He could stop on a dime and give you 9 cents change. He could cut and spin so fast that a less experienced rider could be left in midair. But his disposition was such that Roy could put 3 or 4 kids on his back at the same time without any worries. Trigger was 4 years old when Roy started using him in the films. He was born and raised on a small ranch near San Diego, and Bing Crosby was rumored to be a part owner of that ranch. His original name was Golden Cloud. He was the offspring of a Palomino stud named Tarzan and a white chestnut half-thoroughbred mare. Before coming to Roy, he'd been ridden by Olivia de Havilland in the Errol Flynn film The Adventures of Robin Hood. And over a period of almost 20 years, the original Trigger appeared in every one of Roy's 81 starring films at Republic and all 100 of his television episodes. Roy had doubles for Trigger that were used in the long shots and for some of the chase scenes. Making Western movies can be hard on horses, as they might have to retake a scene several times just to get it right. And when Roy leaned down and patted Trigger's neck and spoke to the big horse, he would just turn on the afterburners and accelerate, often catching up and passing the camera car. Trigger died July the 3rd, 1965, at the age of 31.
A young man from Ohio by name of Leonard Sly had formed a lonesome cowboy band in 1935. Then Leonard hit the movies and learned to rope and ride. The legend of Roy Rogers became the nation's pride. Cowboys always need a horse, a special type of friend. And Roy knew that the studios had horses they could lend. But when he met that stallion, a special bond was formed, a friendship lasting 30 years upon the saddle horn. All the world remembers that movie matinee, the silver screen that gave our lives a meaning and a way. So many hearts were broken in July of '65. The world lost something wonderful the day that Trigger died. Together they would wander across the western range. They gave a nation's children hope, values that don't change. He always got the bad guy, 'cause no horse could outrun the legend that was Trigger and Roy's two fists and gun. Now Roy sung songs of tumbleweeds and please don't fence me in. And Trigger's tricks have always had the power to make us grin. They stood so tall with modest pride, this hero and his horse. They taught us all that good can be a strong, attractive force. All the world remembers that movie matinee, the silver screen that gave our lives a meaning and a way. So many hearts were broken in July of '65, and the world lost something wonderful the day that Trigger died. The world lost something wonderful the day that Trigger died.
That's Leighton Watts, just a fine singer from Australia who actually was in North America and opened for the Sons of the Pioneers for several years at their show in Branson, Missouri. And now here's more about Roy from Rusty Richards.
But Roy was blessed, and he said so often, you know, about how lucky he was to have that great horse.
Yeah.
And of course he was a wonderful family man, and to take all of those kids, you know, that he adopted and brought into his home and raised them, they were his own kids, you know.
Yeah.
As far as they were concerned, and as far as Roy and Dale were concerned, and she was wonderful, you know. She fixed their lunches and get them ready for school. All you got to do is ask any one of those kids how they feel about them, and it won't take you long to know how genuine they were, you know, with it.
Yeah, just wonderful influence and
Yeah.
and wonderful thing to look to. That's for sure.
That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I won't make you strain the voice any longer here. You should probably.
Well, it was a real treat hearing from you, Hugh, and Amy and I both send our love to Billy.
Well, thank you so much, and the same goes for you folks. And
thank you.
And we'll be in touch.
Okay, Hugh.
Okay, good talking to you, Rusty.
You too.
Take care. Bye.
By the way, Rusty has written a wonderful book on the life of his dear friend Casey Tibbs called Born to Ride. And boy, I just couldn't put the book down, and I think Rusty spent more than 20 years putting it together. You can order it from Rusty's website, rustyrichards.com. Coming up, our classic Song of the West and a special piece of cowboy poetry for Mother's Day, when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. Time for another one of those classic Western songs and a little bit of information about the song. The one we're looking at this week was written in 1934. Music by Cole Porter, lyrics by Robert Fletcher and Cole Porter, and members of the Western Writers of America chose it as one of the top 100 Western songs of all time. It was originally written in 1934 for Adios Argentina, which was actually an unproduced 20th Century Fox film musical. The song was based on text by a poet and engineer with the Department of Highways in Helena, Montana, Bob Fletcher. And Cole Porter, who had been asked to write a cowboy song for the 20th Century Fox musical, bought the poem from Fletcher for $250. The song was popularized in the 1944 Roy Rogers movie Hollywood Canteen, and it's been recorded by Bing Crosby and the Andrews Sisters. And as a matter of fact, Bing Crosby went into the studio July 25, 1944 without having seen or heard the song. And the story goes, within 30 minutes, he'd completed the recording that sold more than 1 million copies and topped the Billboard charts for 8 weeks in 1944 and 45. Been recorded hundreds of times. I'm sure many a cowboy has sung this song to his horse as they ride across the range. I know I have. And this is Roy Rogers along with Lorrie Morgan and the Oak Ridge Boys. And this week's classic Song of the West, Don't Fence Me In.
Oh, give me land, lots of land under starry skies above. Don't fence me in. Let me ride through the wide open country that I love. Don't fence me in.
Let me be by myself in the evening breeze.
Listen to the murmur of the cottonwood trees.
Send me off forever, but I ask you please, don't fence me in.
Just turn me loose, let me straddle my old saddle underneath the western skies.
On my cayuse, let me wander over yonder till I see the mountains rise.
I wanna ride to the ridge where the west commences and gaze at the moon until I lose my senses. I can't look at hobbles and I can't stand fences. Don't fence me in.
Wildcat Kelly, looking mighty pale, was standing by the sheriff's side. And when that sheriff said, I'm sending you to jail, Wildcat raised his head and cried,
Oh, give me land, lots of land under starry skies above. Don't fence me in, let me ride through the wide open country that I love. Don't fence me in,
let me be by myself in the evening breeze
and listen to the murmur of the cottonwood trees. Send me off forever, but I ask you please, don't fence me in. I wanna ride to the ridge where the west commences and gaze at the moon until I lose my senses. I can't look at hobbles and I can't stand fences. Don't fence me in.
Send me off forever,
but I ask you please,
don't fence me in.
It's Mother's Day this weekend, and I thought this fine piece of cowboy poetry from Shad Sullivan would be a pretty fitting way to wrap things up. It's called Salt of the Earth.
She doesn't drive a Cadillac and never wore a diamond ring. She's never had a brand new home and doesn't ask for expensive things. From a long line of homesteaders, she was raised in this country. From day one, she has lived in the West. And like most women born here and of her generation, she's endured a million tests. Though it's not always been easy, she married a rancher and took on a life that's not tame. They've seen some harsh times, made it through several trials, and I think she's proud she carries his name. Now, someone once told me she's the salt of the earth. They don't make 'em like her anymore. For 55 years she's stayed with this ranch. I know how this woman can soar. Like when the 80s came on and the family got scared 'cause interest rates soared to the sky. She said, buckle up and get ready. We've got to stay here. We've got to dig in and try. Or the disaster in Texas when the cattle were gone. She was there beside Dad every day. She walked each step through the East Texas woods, determined not to give up and stay. And I'll always be humbled by the strength in her heart and wonder how she got it all in. How did she raise 4 kids under 6, keep the house in order, and muck through those pens? And there's not a woman alive who can open her heart and give more to a stranger than she. She thinks of others like family, takes care of the world, and knows not the meaning of me. Now that's not to say she doesn't rule with a fist. Her claim is that we each have a place. Abide by the rules, give your life to the Lord, and thank Him each day for His grace. Now Dad gets the credit for making the living and for providing for all of his clan. But Mom keeps us together, the ranch and the kids, and that's what's made him a man. She's been run over by yearlings, thrown out of the truck, and broke several bones even twice. This woman has lived through thick and through thin, and I know she has paid the full price. But she doesn't see it that way. She's content with her life and feels lucky to see what she's seen. She's raised a good family, stood by her man, and for some that's only a dream. So if there's crown jewels in our heaven, and I know that there is, this woman deserves the whole pile. But I know what she'll say. She'll accept not a one and politely decline with a smile. She doesn't drive a Cadillac, never wore a diamond ring. She's never had a brand new home and doesn't ask for expensive things.
Thank you so much for making the ride, and I sure hope you can join us right here next week at the same time. And thanks again to our great support crew, Mark and Kathy McMillan. And if you are looking for a real Western experience, their Meadow Springs Guest Ranch is located in the beautiful Caribou Country of British Columbia. You can find all about it at meadowsprings.com. Beautiful country, great food, good horses, and good company. Be sure to look for the latest copy of Canadian Cowboy Country Magazine at your favorite newsstand, and you can subscribe by calling 1-800-943-7336. Till next week, I'm Hugh McLennan. Hope to see you down the trail somewhere real soon.